Welcome to the Vintage Hollywood Archive. Patty Duke was an American actress who was seen on stage, in films, and on television during the golden era of Hollywood. She was a teen star and won an Academy Award at a very young age. She was splendid. Every role she played was one of its kind. Why Patty Duke's childhood traumatized her forever? Make sure to watch the video until the end, and if you are new here, don't forget to join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Patty was an extremely pretty woman, with her long blonde locks, icy blue eyes that drew people in like a moth to a flame. Her voice was soft and a little mellow, a feminine lie that enraptured the people's hearts. Her lips and cheeks were flushed and rosy, her body slender and curvaceous, and her nose raised, her chest was alluring. The air around Patty was very peculiar, and it made one curious as you could never guess what the woman was thinking. When on stage, her presence was domineering and commanding, as if she wanted all the attention to herself, but she did not need to ask for attention, for all eyes were always on her already. She was someone who, alongside the aforementioned award, won 2 Golden Globe Awards and 3 Primetime Emmy Awards. Patty was the 21st president of the Screen Actors Guild. She served as the president, worked hard for those under her, and that earned her a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She worked for the entertainment industry for more than 6 decades, from 1950 to 2015. Receiving a prestigious award in her initial years clearly meant that she was meant for greatness, but things were far from what people assumed. Life plays and plots as we walk through it, and Patty led a life that was quite similar to the rest of us. Her childhood had proven to be a place of woe and trauma for her, and it had set its roots deep within her. Broadway seemed like her only exodus, and it did provide her with the much-needed shelter from what she once called her home. Patty was more than talented, and Hollywood will and had never seen anything quite like her. She was dedicated, in charge of her emotions and feelings, and knew very well how to put on a facade. Her big break into the Hollywood industry came from her role as the miracle worker in the year 1962. The very next year, Patty was given her own show called The Patty Duke Show, in which she played the double role of 2 cousins, Kathy and Patty Lane. Anna Marie was the youngest child in her family, having 2 siblings that were older than her. She was unlike most children, not coddled. Patty Duke, or then known as Anna Marie Duke, was born in New York on December 14th in the year 1946 and was brought up in Queens. John Patrick Duke, her father, was a handyman and also drove a cab when he had time. Frances McMahon, her mother, was a cashier at a small mart. However, in very much irony, the fame she won by playing a teenager with a bubbly personality and knee-high socks and trivial problems was quite different to the world a teenage Patty saw and was brought up in. Her problems were much more real, and they began in her childhood. Amongst them was threadbare upbringing, parents that drank too much, leaving home at a young age, and physical abuse. Patty's 2 older siblings, Carol and Raymond, had lived a pretty bad life too. Her brother Raymond was the one who got her into the industry. He contacted John and Ethel Ross, who were aces in the work of child performers. They named Patty after Patty McCormick, another child star. The Ross were a married couple who seemed a little too eager to take Patty in their care. They were the ones who urged her to change her name from Anne Marie Duke to Patty Duke. By the time she was 12, Patty had 4 major films on her record, along with multiple television and radio shows. They controlled everything about her life, from what she wore to what she did, to when she did something, to what she ate, and even if she could close the door to her own room. She had moved in with them with her mother's permission. They tried to harass her too, but something in her snapped and she was able to stop them. They limited when and where she could see her mother, and the girl was basically their puppet. At the age of 17, she moved to Los Angeles after her manager tried to end her and Harry Falk's fling by moving her sitcom to LA. Patty actually knew how to act, unlike many actors before her who were merely in the industry because of their looks. The breakthrough in her performing career was when she performed in The Miracle Worker, a play that revolved around the early years of Helen Keller, which had been done before on the television with Patty McCormack. This was how she made her debut on Broadway at the small age of 12. Not only was the play a huge hit, but Patty won several awards, and the producer of the play later placed her name on the top of the title when advertising it. She was the youngest performer in her era to receive that honor. Patty also starred in the film version of the play in 1962 and won Best Supporting Actress Academy Award the following spring at the tiny age of 14. Patty was the youngest actress to ever win a competitive Oscar, beating Angela Lansbury for The Manchurian Candidate amongst other famous candidates. Amidst all of this fame, Patty was, as she later revealed, terribly abused by John and Ethel Ross. The couple forced her to take drugs and even gave her an antipsychotic drug called Thorazine. They served her alcohol on a daily basis before she was even 13. John Ross had even tried to assault her, and the manager had set aflame whatever chance she had at a good childhood, their horrid treatment scarring her for life and destroying her adult life too. She was soon diagnosed with bipolar disorder at a time when talking about mental health was a very big taboo and a stigma. Her constant mood swings, crying on and off set for no deliberate reason, and a state of restlessness and anxiousness had fellow co-stars and directors and staff worried. She would constantly crave alcohol and other drugs, thinking that they would help her state, but they of course made things worse. She would often get hallucinations and imagine her parents and talk to them. It got so bad that her managers had to give her sleeping pills in order to keep her in check. Hyperventilation, excessive coughing, and respiratory and breathing problems and blurry eyesight were a few of the adverse effects of her traumatic treatment. And waking up every morning knowing nothing was going to get better was like swallowing shards of glass. Teenagers all over the United States of America thought Patty Duke was the epitome of a typical bubbly teenage girl. In the year 1963, way before she had even won the Oscar, she signed a contract by United Artists Television to star in her very own series called The Patty Duke Show. The series was made by the now best-selling author Sidney Sheldon, with whom Patty spent a few days. As she later revealed, he probably could tell about the psychological problems that she was suffering from without knowing them, seeing in her two very different girls, and coming up with the concept for the show. She played a double role, Patty Lane and Kathy Lane, look-alike cousins with extremely different attitudes towards life. The Patty Duke Show was an immediate hit and ran through 1966, turning Patty into one of the most popular adolescent stars of the time. Kids who had heard of Helen Keller and The Miracle Worker adored Patty in her role of Patty Lane, the teenage high school girl who, as the theme song started, likes to rock and roll. She was most likely the youngest performer ever to get a series named after them, and it was still quite famous at the end of its run in the year 1966. In fact, ABC wanted to renew the show for another season, but wanted it in color. However, United Artists was unwilling to pay for the higher production costs. The series' success led to an effort by United Artists Records to advertise Patty as a teen pop star, which did succeed for a while, briefly in 1965 with the single Don't Just Stand There. The record reached number 8 on the American charts, and the album released after was also a major hit. Her other singles in the next 3 albums, called Patty, Patty Duke's Greatest Hits, and TV's Teen Star, also the soundtrack to the movie Billy, in which she sang 2 songs, were not as popular. Ironically, however, Patty knew that she was not a singer, but had faith that her producers would create something the people would listen to. She loved singing, but the recording process later became such a pain that she came to hate the work she was doing in the studio and left it at her earliest given opportunity in the year 1968. Patty's managers monitored her every move, she would later say, according to the Times magazine. They told her what to wear and what not to, what to do, what to eat and what not to. They introduced her to alcohol at a very tender age and plied her with. They confined and monitored her mother's access to her, being there whenever the two were to meet, as mentioned before. When the Patty Duke Show came to an end, Patty, who was almost 19 by then, ran away from the Rosses' strict control and from her crystal clear and pure child star persona. Patty immediately got married to Harry Falk Jr., a 32-year-old assistant director on the show who she had been meeting in private. She also signed a contract to play a very optimistic pill popper named Neely O'Hare in the movie Valley of Dolls, which became a box office success. However, her marriage to Falk soon ended as her varying mental state resulted in multiple mood swings, heavy alcohol and drug use, and numerous suicide attempts. The couple broke up after 2 years and later divorced. At the age of 23, she had begun dating Desi Arnaz Jr., who was only 17 and a minor at the time. When his mother, who was the legendary comedian Lucille Ball, came to know about her son's affair with the actress who was increasingly getting inappropriate, she was far from being glad. Patty's weird behavior also consisted of giving an acceptance speech after she won her first ever Emmy Award for her starring role in the movie My Sweet Charlie, in which whatever words had left her mouth made absolutely no sense. Patty and his relationship ended after a few months. She also had an affair with John Astin, known today as Gomez from the Addams Family, who was married at the time of their secret relationship. Then suddenly ran away with Michael Tell, a rock promoter, and remained married to him for 13 days only. It turned out that Patty had discovered she was pregnant and wasn't sure who the father even was. She gave birth to her son Sean in 1971 and married Astin in 1972 after his divorce was finalized. She said that Astin was Sean's father, but gossip persisted that Arnaz had fathered Sean. Patty and Astin had a son together, Mackenzie, in 1973. Both Sean and Mackenzie are now actors, with Sean known for his movie roles in films like The Goonies and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Mackenzie is known for his roles in the TV series The Facts of Life and in the movies In Love and War and Iron Will. In the year 1982, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and began with a very much needed treatment. However, it was too late for Patty and Astin's relationship. They divorced in 1985 after 13 very peculiar, uncomfortable, and never-ending years of marriage. After having survived the dark side of child stardom and a hit career in the spotlight of Hollywood, her life took an unexpected turn. In 1986, she married her fourth husband, Sergeant Michael Pierce, who was a technical advisor on one of the movies she had starred in, called A Time to Triumph. She lived with him in Idaho with his 2 daughters and their adopted son, Kevin. They were married for 3 decades until her death. Patty Duke died on the morning of March 29, 2016, in Idaho of sepsis from a ruptured intestine. She won an Academy Award, 2 Golden Globe Awards, 3 Primetime Emmy Awards, and received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She was also the youngest person ever to have their name in lights above the marquee on Broadway for The Miracle Worker. When she won her Oscar for the film The Miracle Worker, she became the youngest Academy Award winner ever in the history of Hollywood. She is remembered for her mental health struggles as much as for her incredible acting skills and achievements. According to the Los Angeles Times, she was one of the first celebrities to speak openly about mental health issues. She discussed her predicaments and more in her 1987 memoir book, Call Me Anne. Her son, Sean Astin, made it his job to carry his mother's goal of increasing mental health awareness. He launched a campaign to establish the Patty Duke Mental Health Institute, but he's not the only member of the family who is carrying on Duke's legacy in showbiz. Patty Duke was a diva in Hollywood and spent many years raising awareness of mental health problems. After finding huge success on the stage, it's no shock that some of her kids followed her into the industry. The funeral was intimate, and friends and family from all over the country were present. With the life that Duke led and inspired her children to lead, it is no doubt that there will be others like her. She was a woman who was dauntless and unafraid, despite all that she had dealt with in her life. She left behind a message of strength and determination, of fighting to the very last breath. Her career was perhaps not the epitome of perfection, but something very close to it. Among fans, she is ever living and immortal. Even today, most find solace, comfort, and laughter in the characters she left behind and the stories she brought to life. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here. You may have noticed that Hollywood has not been an easy place with child stars. How Shirley Temple dealt with the abusive studio system? Let's find out from this video.